Have you ever thought about starting your own business? One of the biggest questions is, do I do it by myself or do I find someone to partner with? Gina Michnowicz had just that question, not once, but twice. And she learned important lessons that she's going to share right now. Gina, can you tell us about founding Craftsman Agency and what inspired you to focus on brand storytelling?
Yeah, that's an easy one actually. I had an agency before and it was becoming very data oriented. And I do think that data is important, but I wanted to sort of focus more on the craft of marketing and advertising. And I was talking to one of my good friends and like former colleagues, and I also still mentor her. And I was like, I just want to get up and be a craftsman and focus on the craft of marketing and advertising every day. And she's like, oh, that's good. I think you should go see if that's available. And so I was kind of born out of wanting to be more creative. So spun that agency out, started kind of out on my own, and had a few key team members, and we started focusing more on brand storytelling, working with artists and collaborations. We built the 10-foot chocolate train, was one of our first projects, that was really focused on, that art and expression, and worked with Godiva and Fox for Murder on the Orient Express. Still one of my favorite campaigns ever.
That sounds like a really cool campaign. And so, do you feel that naming the company, the Craftsman Agency, has helped maintain that vision that you originally had?
Yes, there is something about a name, right? It means something. And for us, it's also a standard. So, it's making sure that we're always continuing to hone our craft and be better every day and evolving. And because there is so much in our industry to evolve. With the use of AI, like what is work for the machine and what is work for the craftsman, the individual craftsman. And so, yes, I think the name is really important. It opened up doors and it made those ideas that I would present. It made people believe that we could do them, and we can.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And most importantly, yourself. But this wasn't your first company that you've started. You started another company before. It was a little different. And I believe you even wrote a book
Yes.
sharing what you learned about this
Yes.
first company.
Yes. I co-founded with one of my best friends, and um, like a lot of those types of stories, we did not, end on the most positive note. And so I was talking to one of my really good friends from high school, and she was going through the same thing. And she ended up having basically this corporate breakup at the same time. We signed agreements on the same day. It was uncanny. And during COVID, both of us were like, okay, we gotta have a project, right? And it was also cathartic to think about writing a book about it. And we both had started, and then we were like, well, maybe we should write it together. And so it's Business Bliss, or Co-founder Chaos, is the title, and it sort of goes through what would be like a dating scenario where you meet someone, you date, you get engaged, you get married, you go through tumultuous times, and then you end up breaking up. And then what happens if you decide to get remarried, and can you be friends with your ex? And in the case of Lynn, who wrote the book with me, she was able to kind of, while still not probably the same level of friendship that it was able to maintain, whereas I unfortunately, we just went our separate ways.
So, what advice would you give to other entrepreneurs on navigating partnerships and conflict within a new business?
Yes. I think a lot of the advice is, and it certainly is in the book, but when you're going through that process of establishing what the vision and the mission of the company is, if you have sort of that gut feeling, ooh, that might not be the way I want to run a business, or that maybe isn't what works for me in the long run, you should follow that instinct and you should not go into business with that person. Because I will say that I didn't follow my gut. And because I was like, oh, it's okay. Like, I'm capable. I can do the work for two people. That isn't realistic and it isn't sustainable for sure. And then it also builds resentment. So the first thing is that if you have a gut instinct that's not going to work, it probably isn't. It's a little bit like getting married. Those things that maybe annoy you or are problematic in the beginning or a little bit concerning, they become big elephants in the room later on as you go through the course of the business. The more successful you are, the bigger the elephant, in my opinion. The other thing is that if you're going to go and you feel like, okay, I've checked all the boxes and all of this is working, you have to establish some really, really solid ground rules. I never recommend 50-50. 50-50 is a nightmare. You have to have somebody that has veto power, because if you get to a standstill, you are at an impasse and you can not make forward progress. It ends up permeating throughout the organization that, mom and dad are fighting. Like, it just isn't, it just doesn't make for, ultimately not everything's going to be 50-50. The work isn't 50-50, the decisions aren't. So you can structure up front what you want your organizational, who is going to have the power to make the decisions in certain places. So that you have your lanes, you're owning your lanes, and you also have the power to make the right decision for the company. And then you got to have a buy-sell, because things change. And even if it's not working out, maybe that person gets this phenomenal job offer and they want to go do something different. That happens. Be prepared for it, because the more money you have, the more difficult it's going to be to kind of unravel it, if you will. Mm-hmm. So those are kind of my nuggets.
No, that sounds enlightening, and you clearly learned those lessons through the experience. And for anyone listening who can learn from your experience, who doesn't have to go through that, you're helping to set them up for success. So I appreciate that. Now, it's interesting. I didn't realize that you could set up certain percentages of ownership, for the lack of a better word, because clearly you both own the company, but you can have higher authority in different areas. So what I'm hearing you say is that someone can have higher authority in finance, in the financial aspects, or the operational aspects, maybe even the hiring aspects, people, human resources. So creative execution, is that how you would divide up the authority? And can you legally authorize different percentages throughout?
So you would basically have different percentages for the agreement. So for just the overall agreement. So you wouldn't split it up from that perspective, but in the agreement, you can have sort of a supplementary addendum that basically says, this person owns the operational side, and they have basically the final decision making for the banking, the investments, the distributions. I will say distributions. I also moved to a C Corp just because I didn't want to deal with the distribution argument anymore. I didn't want to deal with the tax distribution and how that was impacting our individual personal family taxes, being an S Corp. that was a nightmare because you have different tax brackets. So you cannot figure out how to distribute fairly. And so we were always in this stipulation where you were trying to distribute. So owning that and having somebody do that and the bonuses and all that structure, having the person that is most responsible for the money and the sort of lifelong success of the business should be focused on it, not the person that is coin operated. That would be a big mistake, in my opinion. Then there is sort of like, you could be like, this person owns marketing and sales, and they're on the hook for that performance. You can conceivably also have a performance clause in your agreement that says, if you own sales and marketing and you are not doing your job, you don't necessarily have to stay and maintain as an employee. In fact, it shouldn't be the right. It shouldn't be your right as an owner, if you're co-founders, to keep your job if you're not doing your job. So you can actually have those kinds of things in place too, where there's a performance clause and what happens.
Well, it sounds like a great opportunity to have those tough conversations before you both sign on the dotted line as well, or if multiple people, right? Because we're talking about partners, but there could be 3 co-founders that go into an organization as well. But to have these conversations before going into business, you can see if you're even compatible. Mm-hmm. And if there are any red flags, it gives you the opportunity to back out before you sign. So wonderful advice. Thank you so much. I like how you talked about listening to your gut. Some people say it's your intuition.
Yes.
And it is. It's so important to listen to our gut, to listen to our intuition. But we don't always do that. And why not? Because our brain wants to get involved, the logic. Yes. And that's what it sounds like happened to you. And it happens to all of us. But has there been a time when you listened to your intuition and you were really grateful that you did?
I listened to my intuition with the Craftsman. It was a very unpopular decision. My co-founder certainly didn't think it was a good idea, and that was partly because I think she saw that the future and the writing on the wall, that this wasn't ultimately going to be something we were going to do together. We had a board of advisors, and only one person on the board actually agreed. And there were probably a number of employees that didn't think it was a good idea either. But who I did go talk to were a couple of clients and asked them what they thought about this journey. And, they had some good questions. I mean, will I still be able to be a client of the Craftsman? Like, am I a Craftsman? Like, is that going to be an agency that's going to support me? And we had some really honest conversations.
Having a structure of support in place when you set out to create a life that you love and go for a dream is crucial. It's important because we're not always going to get support from our nearest and dearest, and that inner critic is going to be loud. If you are interested in support, I am a certified coach and I do offer programs and various training. You can visit authera.com, which is also listed below. Let's continue to listen to Gina's story.
But by and large, and all the clients basically said, you need to do this and you need to do it now. It is a differentiator. And it also, I can see the passion. And so I followed my gut. And I'm so happy that I did.
Wonderful. And it's also very normal. We have an inspired idea and we go to act on that we're going to hear self-doubt, or that inner critic is going to come up. But also, we may not receive the external support that we either feel like we need or that we would love to have, or sometimes that we even expect that we'll receive.
Yes.
So that is a hero move, to take action and move forward regardless of the support that we receive. So bravo. Great job with that.
Thank you. It was scary. Well, scary, but not.
And it's scary venturing out into something new. That's why a lot of people don't do it. But in order to expand our lives and to have rewarding experiences, taking risk and experiencing fear is a part of that journey.
Yes. Well, certainly you cannot be a entrepreneur if you aren't willing to take risks and sort of go against the fear. I mean, a healthy dose of fear is good, right? So I think looking at it sort of intelligently and breaking it down and being like, okay, what is the worst thing that can happen? And that's something my dad always taught me. What is the worst thing that could happen? I was like, it doesn't work. I go
Right.
get a job. Like, I think I still have marketable skills. Or I start something different. Like I'm not scared to do that anymore. And so I think that when I answered that question, what's the worst thing that could happen? I was like, really, it's not the worst thing. I mean, it wasn't, I don't think that the previous agency was going to make it anyways, ultimately. So it
Right.
was definitely the right decision.
Good. It sounds like you stared fear in the face and really looked at it for what it was. And that tiger was just a little cub. And you're like, I can handle this.
Yes.
So you said you had to make some tough decisions around the pandemic, like cutting expenses and salaries. What advice would you give to other agency owners navigating challenging economic times?
Act quickly. So, like, if you see yourself in, so the global pandemic was, I will never forget when my husband was he was like on his computer and he closed it and he said, we're going to go into a global pandemic. He's like, there's the first case hit Iran, and it's not been, that nobody's really traveled to Iran, right, from China. So he's like, that just seems like you can see like the map was starting to show the spreading of COVID. And at that point in time, like the next day, I started cutting expenses. I cut, the little expenses. We were in a buyout agreement. That was a big expense. That was one thing that we had to address. That was very painful, part of the process that I won't go into. But that was something that we had to do. And because we were a Delaware corporation, I'm going to just touch on, we were a Delaware corporation.
Yeah.
And I, as the, most senior officer, had to be fiduciary responsible for the company. And so there were certain things that we couldn't pay because it was not being fiduciary responsible member or director of the company. And so there were, I did get a lot of guidance on that. So that was one thing. We cut out like a lot of things. Why do you need Expensify? You don't if you're not going to have any expenses because you're going to be locking it down. So we did a lot of that. And then we basically went as a leadership team and we went to each employee. And the leadership team took a bigger hit of, bringing, like taking a percentage, I think I took 25 or 30% out of my pay. But at least I had some pay, I was grateful for that. And we went to each employee and we said, this is kind of what we're asking so that we can keep the team whole and we can keep us together and we can help support everyone's families during this very difficult time. And everyone agreed to take a cut. And then there were a couple of people that just weren't performing. So we did release them because it just wasn't working anyway. And we just couldn't afford to keep anyone that wasn't, that wasn't really all in, if that makes any sense, for the overall success. And so it was acting quickly. I'm really, really proud of what we did to manage manage our cash. We acted quickly on the PPP. That saved us. I'm still so grateful for that program. We had 2 rounds of it, and we didn't have to pay it back, which really, really helped us on the other side, which has helped us be a strong, employer for, people going forward. And that, I think, when we look at how we were able to keep families, kind of going, I'm just proud of us overall. So.
That is great to act quickly, and that is a trait of a successful person, is being able to make decisions quickly, act quickly, even when you don't feel ready.
Yes. Yes.
And sometimes it's good if you act quickly because then you don't have time to overthink too.
Right, because I can tell you we had like 2 years ago, it was a pretty rough year. Really, election years tend to be pretty bad, but this one was particularly bad. And it elongated and it went past the election, which doesn't normally happen. Normally, the election happens and then people kind of get back to normal. That isn't what happened this time. And so I did not make decisions fast enough. Like, with my partner that is somebody that helps me manage the business, I mean, I think she was all for really releasing people because we had too many people on payroll for what our services were that we were delivering. And I dragged my feet. I dragged my feet for 5 months. So I regret that. So that will be just another example of, that was a definite scenario where my brain got into it. And it just one more project. We'll see if this person can pull it through. And then you get done and you'd be like, oh my gosh, I so wanted you to succeed, but I'm going to have to do this. So.
Yeah. And it happens. I don't think anyone manages a company perfectly. And sometimes you think, well, things usually pick up after the election. So I'm sure it's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
Next week it could be different. But in hindsight, you see it clearly.
Yeah, I should not have let it go past like 2 months. It was clear.
Right.
It was starting to become very clear. So.
Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing of entrepreneurship, is that there's always lessons to learn, and there's always new opportunities, new similar opportunities to apply that lesson to in the future. So
Yeah.
I'm sure if you haven't already used that lesson, you will at some point.
Yes, definitely. No, I hope to not, but
I hope not either, but there's always ebbs and flows. So, well, you're clearly passionate about creative and storytelling aspects of marketing. So how do you balance the creative and marketing with the need to deliver measurable results for your clients?
That's a good question. I mean, honestly, if you're not telling a good story, and you're not developing content that is resonating with the audience, your performance metrics are going to suck. Like, it just is not going to work. And so, we have a couple of clients that really have moved over and understand that and really look at brand to demand. How can you tell that story with connective lines and that connective pull through across all platforms? And so, Cisco's a very large client of ours, and on the security side specifically, and she is the client that has gotten that and now understands. It used to be only performance, performance, performance. And we were like, we brought Marvel and Cisco Duo together. And the first campaign was really hard to sell. I mean, it took 3.5 years of different films and different, kind of partnership ideas. And finally, there was an executive team that understood that it was going to work. And that is a great example of where you're going from brand to demand, and the aura that you get from a very successful brand storytelling campaign that brings you down the funnel. So I will say that we are focused on metrics, But if you don't have a story and you don't have relevant content and you are boring your audience to tears and you're not entertaining them in any aspect, it's not going to work anyway. It doesn't matter how much paid media you throw at it either. We've
Right.
experienced that. We've experienced like pieces of content that are given to us in our paid media programs, and the audience and the algorithms do not support it. Like if it's not a quality piece of content, the target audience knows it.
Mhm.
Consumer, B2B, it doesn't matter. Everyone's a consumer. So,
So, speaking of quality, I'd love to hear your opinion on AI
mhm.
and how it's being used. Because as a consumer, I do go on social media and I see reels that are clearly created through AI, and I don't see that quality there. It's very monotone, it's very robotic. Um, and people fear, especially, I mean, not especially, but including creatives,
Mhm.
that their job is going to be taken over by AI. So, how do you, as a creative yourself and an owner of an agency, how do you perceive AI being used in the space, and how does your agency use AI in this space effectively?
I mean, AI is definitely the the topic of the day, right? And the AI slop is real. And the just because you can create it in AI and it makes you faster doesn't mean that you should. like and the more time, and I if I sort of backtrack a little bit,
Mhm.
2 years ago, I fought that AI was going to be like, I just really fought it. Because as a creative, it deeply disturbed me and made me just, you've been working for all of these years to continue to be a better creative, a better storyteller, come up with these really, really cool ideas, and a machine's going to take that all away, and it's always going to be a machine. I couldn't really grapple with that. So, what do you do in those scenarios? You go jump in and you try to understand what these tools really can do. Um, because I think being in denial as a creative about AI is not the right way to go, because that you will be left in the dust. And you do need to have the skills to understand how to do a prompt to get something out of AI.
Mhm.
It does still have persistent and consistency issues. You can put a prompt in as you're trying to perfect it over and over again, and it starts doing things on its own. So it will give the person 3 arms at the computer. It will, it'll do certain things that you are like, that it still does have issues. It's getting better. We have a spot that is AI. It is an AI created spot. Um, it's a very short spot, because the longer when you're stitch you have the AI does better with shorter stints, but you still need like a craftsman to stitch it together. You still need the craftsman to develop the story, because you have the concept that is an analogy. So a great example is like fishing season is over. We are doing analogies with fishing and fishing, like fishing with like a hook and a worm, and because nobody had done anything like that in the market. And so it's got a lot of little clever play where if you asked AI, because I test it, I'm like, okay, I've got these ideas. I'm going to give AI just a prompt and I'm going to see what it comes up with. But I already have my ideas and it comes up with a lot of crap because it's all the slop that's out there already that it's
Mhm.
pulling. Um, but there are times that we're doing a game for a client. We had a craftsman start the character, drew the craft, like a great illustrator on our team, drew the character. We put it into AI. We said make it a 3D game like character, and it did it in minutes, and it was adorable. And
Mhm.
we could not. It would have taken a modeler a lot of time to do that. It would have been at least a 40-hour job. But if you need to make any alterations to that character, it's a problem
Okay.
because it's not a manipulable file. It is not a standard format. It is an AI file. It is not MP4. It is not JPEG. It is not PSD. It's not those types of things. You can't typically go back and have it very like do exactly what you want it to do. The only thing or person that can do that is a person to the level of the craft that you need it to. So it's kind of like you start with a craftsman, you end with a craftsman. A lot of those times in that game is a great example. We had to recreate a lot of what AI did because we needed it to do something different. And the more you put the prompt in, it just didn't. The character started looking different, even if you told it to be persistent. And so it just kind of sometimes decides it wants to do things. There's like a customer service example for AI that the AI agent actually started making policies on its own and told customers, no, we can't do that. There's a new policy. Just made it up.
Oh, wow.
It's like one of those things that was really like very basic and would be expected, like some basic support issue for software. So I will say that I am bullish on AI for automation and for doing a lot of that manual work that a person should not do. I think you always still need a skilled designer, a skilled video editor, a skilled some VO is getting better. I still think those inflections of some of the really great VO actors, I still believe that they're better. Do we use AI in the first round of VO before we've actually decided? Yes, because that helps us understand the cadence of the video.
Mm.
So lots of uses, lots of trials, doesn't always do what it says it's going to do. So
Mhm.
it's a lot of it's marketware, but a lot of it's doing some solid things.
Mhm. That was very thoughtful. And it sounds like AI has its place, but it's not fully functioning. And who knows, maybe there'll be a new program where you can then edit an AI file, or AI will be able to create it in an MP4 or something.
I mean, I think that's going to be the next round.
Okay. Yeah, probably. I'm sure it will continue to evolve, um, as we all are, as all tools are. And so, what do you see as the biggest opportunities and challenges facing agencies like yours in the next 3 to 5 years? And where do you plan to focus your efforts?
So I think, I mean, this is a societal issue, but agencies inherently get a lot of their talent, from new college grads, interns, and the reality is AI is taking a lot of the need for a lot of those jobs. So the balancing act for what is good for society and helping the next generation come up to be great creatives means that we're probably going to have to balance like who we're going to bring on and mentor, and we're going to be a lot pickier about that. So I think that's going to be and really agencies are going to have to grapple with how they want to deal with that. We are going to continue to have to figure out how to get the most out of AI, what makes the most sense for efficiency, and what are the services that we can do that a machine cannot. So leaning into experiential, to activations, to a lot of those kinds of things, to looking at different lines of businesses so that we really do evolve partially out of maybe just pure agency. And that I think is part of the vision.
Okay. Wonderful. And as the founder and leader of the Craftsman Agency, what are you most proud of when you look at the work you and your team have accomplished?
Well, we loved our Cruella campaign and got a Silver Clio. Super proud of that. I am proud. I am just proud of our team and how they show up every day. We have a small but mighty team. We produce way more work, not leveraging actually that much AI. We produce way more work than should be for this size team. And I'm just proud of how we kind of keep fighting, and we are a team that feels a lot like a family, and we come together to get things done. I'm really proud of the clients that we've helped sort of move over from just being just performance to direct response to really thinking about sort of that full customer experience and journey, and how can you really tell a fantastic story. See, we're seeing a lot of our clients want to lean into storytelling. So we helped influence that. I'm proud of that.
That is something to be proud of. Anything else that you'd like to tell our audience today?
Find us at thecraftsmanagency.com.
If you enjoyed listening to Gina's story and you feel inspired, be sure to share this video and subscribe. Now I invite you to listen to Emily's story. She also set out on her own and became a marketing consultant. Remember that you deserve to live a life that you absolutely love. You can do it. I believe in you.